Hello, welcome to Beyond the First 5 Links using Google's left-hand panel. I'm Tasha Bergson-Michelson, a search educator here at Google, and today I'm going to introduce you to a number of great features that live in our left-hand panel. Because this is a recording, I have put together some practice questions for you to try out these features with. So after each one, we'll go to a screen showing some questions. You can click down here on the pause button in your playback, and you can take your time, do the questions. You can toggle back and forth between the questions showing on your screen and your browser. And when you're ready, you can hit play again in the same place and come back and continue learning about the next feature. So let's get started. First off, because Rosa Parks' birthday is coming up, I have been searching about her with a number of my students, and we found the left-hand panel very useful. So we're going to use Rosa Parks as our sample query for today. We'll do a couple of other searches along the way, but for the most part, I want us to have a single, simple query, and we're going to look at all the different parts of the left-hand panel and how we get different results for the same query with each one. So, actually, before I introduce the left-hand panel, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about those first 5 links, or the first screen of search results. Now, I know that a lot of us, when we run searches in Google, we get the results that Google deems most relevant to our query. We may or may not find sources that we feel are necessarily ones we want to cite in an academic work, or that we want our students citing. So we're tempted to just disregard them completely. However, I found that these sources can sometimes make excellent stepping stones. That is, they pave a path, they help us create a path from where we begin, what we know at the beginning, what we're thinking about, and where we want to be. And often we find we're telling students that they should not be citing sites that they're very familiar with, such as Wikipedia, such as question and answer sites, also known as answer sites, and other things that come up as first results. And so students might be familiar with these, feel comfortable with them, feel attracted to them, and yet we're telling them don't use them. I think that I find that working with my students, it's much more productive if I can actually demonstrate how they can effectively use these early sources as stepping stones towards where they really want to be. Take, for example, Wikipedia, which is often the first result, as it is here. Let's take a look. When I look at the Rosa Parks entry in Wikipedia, I actually learn a lot of interesting information. It's not unusual for me to learn something that I'm able to confirm as true through other sources that I had never heard before. For example, when I was taught about Rosa Parks in school, no one ever taught me that when she refused to give up her seat, she was already the secretary in the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP. Now, when I read this, it might actually make me think, I should go see what the NAACP has to say about Rosa Parks. If I do so, I'll find that their website says that her refusal to stand on the bus was part and parcel of her political activity. On the other hand, other sources, including this very next sentence in Wikipedia, say that Rosa Parks wasn't acting in a politicized manner when she refused to give up her seat. She was just really tired and tired of always having to give up her seat. So several things happen. One, from this single paragraph, I ask myself, does this source mentioned, the NAACP, have more information for me? And second, I see something that I want to inquire into further. We're always talking to our students about inquiry, and I think it's a really powerful thing when we can teach them to use these stepping stone resources to find points of interest, things that they really want to inquire more about. In addition, when I look even at the second paragraph, I see that Rosa Parks was not the first person who had refused to give up her seat. She was not the first person who had gone to prison for it. So it's really a very compelling way to maybe get a research process rolling. As long as we take the time to actively teach our students how to use these sources with which they're comfortable, then there isn't a reason that we have to rebel against them completely. I actually circle back to Wikipedia a few times today because I find it a really compelling resource. Of course, there's the question of citable sources, and actually I wanted to share with you at least one school that I know of, the Bay School in San Francisco Bay Area, encourages students after their bibliography or works cited section in their paper to have an acknowledgement section. The acknowledgement section acknowledges other sources of information that might not be citable. Were they inspired by someone? Did someone give them help? Were they nudged along their path by a particular source, be it a person or a written source or something else? And that's a really interesting way to allow students to use some of these stepping stone resources, allow them to mention them in their work, but not to use them in a manner that might run counter to what you would like to see your students doing with the works that they're actually using for the formal research process itself. Okay, that covered. Let's move on to the actual left-hand panel. The left-hand panel that we're talking about today is this section right here. And we are going to start with the bottom part section here, and we're going to start with more search tools. You can see more search tools, this link right here. So when I run a search in Google, the left-hand panel will tend to show me sections of the features that it offers. It selects which ones it thinks are most relevant to the research I'm doing and displays them. But I can click here on this More Search Tools link, and then this section opens up. And now I can see that there are a number of different options. And ironically, the first one is highlighted there in blue. This is the first one I want to look at today. The timeline filter is a really compelling one to me at the beginning of a research process. What it does is it runs my search query, Rosa Parks here. It takes the words that I asked for, looks for them in documents, brings back the documents it finds relevant, and then looks through them one more time to identify dates that appear in the text, especially close to my search terms. And then it arranges the sources not in the usual ranking order that Google uses, but actually in chronological order by the dates mentioned in the text. So what I'm seeing here is a list of sources that that are arranged by the dates in the text itself, and then I'm seeing a graphical interpretation up here at the top of what dates appear within the text. So, for example, just here in the middle, I see this really big spike. What that tells me is that most of the pages that have the words Rosa Parks and have a date in the 1950s. If I want to see what that date is, though I have my suspicions, I can click on it, and then you'll see a second timeline opens up beneath that. And I can continue clicking section by section and narrowing down, and now I am all the way in December of 1955, and I can see from reading, as I suspected, that was the date at which she refused to give up her seat. And then let's say I wonder what the spike is over here in 2000. I can click on, in the last decade, I can click on it, click through, and discover that October of 2005 is when Rosa Parks died. So by looking at this top timeline, I can actually get an overview of a subject, and I can explore the subject just generally. If it's a concept, say a publicly debated concept, I could actually see the ebb and flow of discussion or of events related to that concept over time, and I can click in and see what happened on a particular date and actually maybe draw keywords. So I'm not only getting dates that I might want to search, I'm also finding names of people or names of events that are going to help me potentially build a plan in my research as I go forward. So what I'd like to do is I would like to pause and give you a moment to play with Timeline View. Here is your search challenge. Go ahead and try Hyderabad. All right, so moving on, we are going to return to the left-hand panel. So when we look at timeline, what we're seeing is dates that are mentioned in the text of a source. But what if I want to know something about the age of the source itself? What if I want to filter for newer data or for sources that were created in a certain time period? This section right here allows me to do just that. So time limiting searches or date limiting allows me to look at either narrow to recent sources or to give a custom range. So first, actually, let me close out of timeline, which I am going to do by going up to this bar here, which will remind me that I'm in timeline search, and there is this X over here. And when I click on the X, it disappears, returns me to my regular results. Now I am free to go ahead and filter by date. So I can either look at websites. I'm going to click on past month. I can look at web pages that have been created in the last month. And in this case, in the case of date filtering, what Google does is it first takes into account when it first discovered a resource. So for example, as Google is now crawling pretty quickly, when it comes upon a new page, the date that Google found that page is attached to its record. And so it is true in the past that there have been, say, a web page that was created in 1993 and then actually discovered by Google spiders in 1999 or 2000 or 2005, and it might show up then under the wrong date. But for the most part, now we are crawling really quickly and are discovering a lot of pages as they come online. Now, in addition, to help make sure that we don't have this problem with a 1993 page showing up in a 2005 search, we also look for dates on the page in the text, but particularly giving preference to dates that appear in locations in the text that suggest that they talk about the date on which the source was created. So if there's a title of an article and then a date right after it, that would qualify to help us understand the age of a page. So for the most part, this is a pretty precise way to tell the age of a source. So here I'm looking at the past year. I also have the option to go ahead and click here on custom range. Now, if we remember that it was October of 2005 that Rosa Parks died. So we've looked at, through timeline search, pages that mention October of 2005. Now what we can do is actually look at pages that were posted to the web in October of 2005. I went ahead and I just typed 10/2005 into the from and to date ranges, but if you look up at the top of the page in this nice blue stripe that tells us how we're filtering, you'll see that it tells us we're now actually looking at pages that were created between October 1st, 2005 and October 31st, 2005. So if I wanted to search the whole year, I can just type 2005 in the from box and the to box, and Google will automatically expand that to be from January 1st to December 31st. Now, in addition, I have extra information in my search results. For each of these, you'll see there's now a gray date appearing beneath the title in my search result, and this tells me the date on which the source was entered into the Google index, or the date on which it was created. And in addition, right now they are ranked by the usual Google ranking system, but in this section of the left-hand panel right here, I am given the option of changing how they're sorted. So if I click on sort by date, now I can see from looking at my blue toolbar that it's both limited to a certain date and sorted by date. So now the sorting by date feature always goes in reverse chronological order. It gives me the newest resources first. We don't yet have an option for sorting from oldest to newest. Nonetheless, it's a fun feature to have access to. It sometimes helps me organize my information well, and when I'm done, I click on the X and close this sorting. All right, I'm going to give you a moment to play with the limiting by time feature. Go ahead and look up Arnie Duncan and see if you can find this information. All right, moving on through our left-hand panel. The next piece we're going to look at is called the Wonder Wheel. The Wonder Wheel appears just here in the left-hand panel, and it is a tool that some teachers really like to use for brainstorming. When I click on Wonder Wheel, I get this view which allows me to see my own query here in the middle, and it is surrounded by similar queries that other people have run. Now, some of them, as you can see, are narrower versions of my concept. Some of them are related, subjects that are conceptually related in some way. Now, what I can do is I can either click on one of these links and see a Wonder Wheel surrounding it, or I can actually just look at this for inspiration. I like showing students the Wonder Wheel to demonstrate to them that sometimes adding a second term or two, thinking through what you really want and adding a word or two to your query to narrow your search can be really successful. This gives demonstrations and helps students brainstorm. In the meantime, the Wonder Wheel results are showing up right over here, and they will change dynamically as I click on each link. So why don't you go ahead and try the Wonder Wheel yourself with a search for solar energy. Moving on, the next stop in our journey down the left-hand panel is sites with images. To digress for a moment, let me show you what I see a number of students doing when they do a text search. So I see a lot of students in upper elementary and middle school who will run a search and then will actually come to Google Images if they have access to it at school. If not, they often do this at home. They come to Google Images to pick a page they want to read. So they're using the pictures to pick text. So they will come and they'll say, okay, Rosa Parks. Well, what I know about her was she rode on a bus. Well, here's the picture of someone on a bus, so I'm going to go ahead and click through to this site. I personally tried to discourage my students from doing that. And so when I have a student who really seems like he or she needs to have those images to help scaffold the reading experience, I show sites with images. When I click on sites with images, my student then will see sites that are ranked in essentially the same way we usually rank our results. However, it gives preference to, as you might have guessed, sites with images. So here, what I see is I see not only images that I can look at on the site, but I have, as usual, the title, and I have the snippets, which show my search terms, my keywords in context, and also I have the URL, if that helps me make a judgment about whether I want to go to the site or not. So it has a lot more text-related information than I am often going to see in image results. It helps me judge the text based on keywords, like I would normally want to, but it also gives me that scaffolding of images. So I try to use sites with images with some students to help move them towards using the typical text results to choose a site. And it's also part of teaching students how to read an entire search result and use the information given me on a search results page to choose what the best site is actually to click on. So why don't you go ahead and play with sites with images by looking for manta rays. Our next stop in the left-hand panel is the Nearby feature. So, keeping with the search Rosa Parks, when I click on Nearby, what I get is websites having to do with both my area and with Rosa Parks, my search words. So, for example, I can change locations over here in the left-hand panel. Let's say I picked Burlingame, California, which is in San Mateo County. It's halfway between Google's headquarters in Mountain View and our San Francisco office. Burlingame, as I said, in San Mateo County. So now I'm seeing a number of search results that actually take into account the concept of San Mateo County along with the concept Rosa Parks that I have entered in the search bar. An interesting part of what happens is that when I click on Nearby, I'm given the option of how I want to define nearby. These three links to city, state, and region are not normally part of the left-hand panel. They appear when I click on Nearby. And if I click on State, now I'm seeing results for Rosa Parks Elementary. If I click on throughout California, pardon me. If I click on Region, it's more the Bay Area. If I click on City, we're back to Burlingame-specific sources. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to play with Nearby, looking for museums in your area. The next feature that is offered in the bottom portion of the left-hand panel is perhaps my very favorite. although I do love custom date range filtering. But I work with a lot of students who do work with Model UN or other projects where they need to get perspective of speakers of another language on a given subject. For example, had a Model UN student who was trying to research tuberculosis, issues surrounding tuberculosis and other infectious diseases in Cape Verde. Cape Verde speaks Portuguese, the student did not. So what's a student to do? And the answer is use translated foreign pages. So when you click on translated foreign pages, what happens is Google takes your query, it determines what pages in other languages, what other languages have the most pages that match your query. In this case, with Rosa Parks, it has selected French, Spanish, German, and Italian. Of course, Rosa Parks is not a topic that gets translated to look different. So, for example, if we search for haiku, then Google picks Japanese as the most relevant language. I can see how, just here, how it has translated haiku into Japanese. My results then are pages that were in Japanese that had haiku in Japanese on the page. They're kept in Google ranking order, except they're translated into English and shown back to me in a form that I can read, including the snippet here, so that I can judge on which page I want to click. Now, it is true that I will often get Wikipedia as a result. It has occurred to me that that's actually kind of cool, because what I have in Wikipedia is a crowdsourced opinion about a subject. And so it is possible then for me to bring back, say, the Japanese language Wikipedia page about haiku, the English language Wikipedia page about haiku, and let's say the German Wikipedia page about haiku, and compare them and compare what's said. And you can imagine that with some perhaps more controversial subjects than haiku, you could see really, really interesting variations in the quality, in the opinions that are offered in Wikipedia in different languages. So that's interesting to me. Returning to Rosa Parks, as we saw before, I got these 4 languages. Say I don't want to look at these particular languages. I can actually take this little X that's to the left of each language. I can click on the X and get rid of each language I don't want. When I'm down to one language, here, French, I can click on that language. And now here's a list of languages from which I can choose. So let's say I want to look at Icelandic. And now here are pages written in Icelandic that mention Rosa Parks. I have an opportunity to look through them. We're going to go look at this one, for example. And when I look at that page, what I see is the page pretty much just as it appears in the original language. In fact, I have the a lot of times you'll see any display ads will stay in their language. So you'll be seeing ads, say, in Arabic and text in English, because what gets translated is the text itself. So here on this page, I have the opportunity to look up at the top. There's this box that tells me, except I just drew over it, tells me that I'm reading from Icelandic into English. Let me clear that so you can see it. And then over on the side here, it tells me but I'm looking at the translated version and gives me the option to click on the original instead if I want to view it in the original Icelandic. So that is how I run a translated search. I'm going to give you a moment to play with translated search because I think it's so absolutely wonderful. Looking for information on the Gulf oil spill. All right, so we have looked through now the entirety of the bottom of the left-hand panel. We have talked about how to both look at a timeline where we see different sources that mention dates in the text. We've looked at how to limit by the date of the creation of a source, and also how to view sites with images integrated into the search results, to use the Wonder Wheel to brainstorm, to use timeline to come up with an overview of a topic at the beginning of a research process, nearby to see pages from a particular region about a topic, and translated foreign pages to look at pages in foreign languages and get an understanding of what people are saying about a topic. When I'm done with the bottom of the left-hand panel, I can click on Reset Tools, and I am back to the beginning. And now we will go and look at the top. Pardon me, I somehow got stuck in Wonder Wheel. There we go. Now I can look at the top of the left-hand panel. Like with the bottom of the left-hand panel, it is not showing me everything available at once. I can click on this More link right here and see all of my options. So the top half of the left-hand panel shows databases that collect individual kinds of sources in one place. So we're going to start with one of the most popular ones with students and work our way down. That is images. Now I know that some people block images, but there are actually some really excellent uses for it, and I'd like to show you a few that I like. So for example, you will notice, first of all, that the left-hand panel, the bottom half, changes based on what database you're in. So here, pardon me, I am seeing filtering options that are specific to images. And for example, let's say you are a librarian and you have a student come up to you, tell me if this has ever happened before, and said, hey, you know, I read this book on Rosa Parks once that I really liked, and I want to look at it again. And the thing is, I don't remember what it's called, but it was pink. Now, those of you who have had this experience know that it may or may not have actually been pink, but you can actually do a search on Rosa Parks. You can look at the results here, and you can actually discover that there are 2 books here with a pink cover. So you can ask, was it one of these? And the student will say, oh yes, that was the book. You see from the link that it's a Scholastic book. Now you can go over to Google Books and look for more information on it. You can find it on your library shelf now that you know what they're talking about. You can help a student check the catalog, but you've actually identified the book by the cover color, which, as we know, is necessary an awful lot. Now, I am going to first use my Xbox, my little box here to close down the pink filter. Let's say for a moment, as happens all too often, the student hasn't actually searched for Rosa Parks, but just for the word parks, and is now sitting here looking at the results, absolutely baffled as to what he or she is to do with all these pictures of parks. Now, luckily, besides just teaching the student to go back and type the word Rosa before parks, put in a complete query. We also have an opportunity to filter by type of image, including by face. So when I click on face, now all the images that I'm looking at have faces and have to do with the concept of parks. That could include, I see things where there are images about parks. There's Gordon Parks, and there's Michael Parks, and there's also Rosa Parks. And maybe the student says, well, okay, that's close, but now I really want a black and white image because I'm looking for pictures of Rosa Parks when she was young, and they'll probably be in black and white. So now I've used, according to my top guide bar here, I have faces and black and white as my two filters. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to play yourself with Google Images. Go ahead and look for pictures of oil spills. Okay, returning to our left-hand panel, our next stop is Google Video. Now, why is Google Video useful? This is not a question I could have answered before I came to work here, because to me, in my mind, Google Video was synonymous with YouTube. In actual practice, they are quite different. YouTube is a subset. It is a small portion of the sources that are available through Google Video Search. So what this means is, for example, if I wanted a particular source like CNN, or if, say, I was in a school district where I wasn't able to show YouTube because of filtering issues, but I still wanted a video and I could access through a different site, then this is a great place to come and identify the video. And once again, the left-hand panel offers a bunch of ways to filter. Say, for example, that I wanted to show a video in my class, but I didn't want to be so short that it had no content, but I also didn't want it to take the whole class period. I can actually filter by duration, by length of video, and so maybe I want videos that are medium in length, that is 4 to 20 minutes. By clicking on that link in the left-hand panel, I now have videos that are between 4 and 20 minutes. I have the information on how long the video is showing right there. Let's say, in addition, I wanted to filter by something that I could show in my school. And let's say in my school, I was able to view SchoolTube. So here is SchoolTube, and I can now click on the link, SchoolTube, and now, according to my blue bar at the top, I'm looking at medium-length videos from SchoolTube. And from looking at the URLs here, I can see that, in fact, all the videos are from SchoolTube. Now, let's say for a moment, for the sake of argument, let's move away from the left-hand panel, because after I taught this webinar last time, I got a really excellent question from one of the participants. Wanted to know, what if I want SchoolTube, but but it doesn't actually appear in the left-hand panel because that's a dynamic list of sites. So you can actually use what's called a cite command in your search bar. So right now, I'm up here in the search bar. I have Rosa Parks, my search terms, and then I have cite : and let's say I wanted CNN.com. So this command here, SITE : followed with no spaces between it by the domain that I want to search. So no www, just CNN.com, SchoolTube.com, TeacherTube, etc., will allow me to run a search specifically within that site. It happens that there are not a lot of results that meet my criteria. So my top couple of results are from CNN, and then I go back to regular results. Certain subjects and certain websites will, of course, have more results than others. But this cite command is actually, among the commands that we offer, this is one of my favorites. Commands are another lesson, but I will say briefly that you can use it in general web search. You can use it in images, in videos, in some of our other databases that we're going through now to limit your search and search a specific site or domain name. So that's a pretty cool option that we offer. Now I am going to let you try a video search. Go ahead and look for presidential inaugural addresses. Okay, moving on, our next stop in the left-hand panel is news search. Now, if you're like most users, when you think of news search, you think of what's happening right now. In point of fact, we're looking at Rosa Parks. There hasn't necessarily been extremely recent news, but we can see there was news posted 20 hours ago, 3 days ago. If we were working on a hot topic that's hot at this moment, we'd be seeing stories that were posted 4 minutes ago, or 2 minutes ago, or 16 minutes ago. So we know that we can come to Google News for current events, to look across a number of news sources and carefully select traditional news sources and carefully selected blogs. However, Google also has an extensive archive. So you can do searching, time-limiting searches, just like you could in general web search. But my favorite aspect of this is the custom range. So if I open custom range, now we may remember that it was December of 1955 that Rosa Parks refused to leave her seat, helping to spark the bus boycott. So now I can actually pull up these news stories are from December 1st to December 31st of 1955. And as I look through the results, what I'll actually see is that I'm seeing newspaper stories from different parts of the country, from different communities in particular geographic areas. And I can actually click through and read newspaper articles from 1955, and I can compare, again, I can compare the voice and the tone of different articles from different communities talking about the same subject. So I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of primary sources. I find that kids really light up when they work with primary sources, and again, it stimulates inquiry in the research process because you're not necessarily using someone else's interpretation, or rather you're trying to decode someone else's interpretation of an event or an issue. And I just think it's really research at its finest. And when I look at the Google News database, that's what I see. If I click on some of these, I will get a scanned PDF of the article itself. If I click on other results, some newspapers, they've actually scanned in the entirety of every issue, ads, articles, everything. It looks kind of like microfiche, and you navigate it similarly. So a student can go in and look at a story about the bus boycott. The student can see in a community what kind of ads were in the newspapers, what were the images that were being given of people in the ads, what were other things that were happening in the same day, giving context to an historical event. I find that really, really exciting. I should mention that some newspapers choose to offer their articles pay-per-view, but there are usually a good host of these free-to-use articles. So, in the spirit of exploring cool newspaper archives, go ahead and look up Tyrannosaurus Rex and check out what's there. In our next stop, we actually do have shopping here, which can be useful in a lot of contexts. Because it's not widely useful in academic contexts, I'm going to move on today. Rather than dragging it, I'm going to move on here to books. Now, I did something on purpose here, and that is that I did not close down my date restriction. So I did this date restriction in news, and now here I am in books, and I didn't, whoops, I crossed it up, but I didn't get anything. It says I didn't get any documents. And the reason why, which often takes a moment to realize, is I haven't turned off the date limiting, and no books were written with Rosa Parks in them in 1955. So once I turn off the date limit, then look, I get a lot of results. So again, to take a moment to talk about what really moves me about Google Books, because I absolutely love it. I find Google Books, which is a gigantic database with millions, well over 10 million volumes now, the oldest of which I believe, the last time I checked, was a German mathematics text from the year 1400. Just a really broad collection of books. And students can come, and in some cases they can see, like this top link, they can see a preview, which means that a certain portion of the book has been made freely available. How much and what exactly is based on an agreement between publishers and Google. Sometimes you'll just see a snippet view, which is essentially keywords in context. It's your search terms with this part of the sentence in which they appear. Sometimes there's simply the citation for the book, and sometimes the entire book is available. So it varies widely. But you can come in here and you can look, and you can actually use the left-hand panel if you want to sort to look for previews or full views of books. Of course, we should remind students that if they are reading only preview sections of a book, selected sections, they're probably missing the greater context that the author is giving to the topic and to the information that he or she is sharing. And so it behooves the student to find a full text version of that book, whether print or electronically. But you can use the left-hand panel to narrow. Also, I want to show you quickly, if you click through to a result, there's a really amazing opportunity to find the book in a library near you. Now, for when we just have a citation or a snippet view, the Find in the Library is over here on the right. For previews and full views, the Find in the Library is this entire Get This Book panel appears on the left. So it does move, you have to look for it, but once you find it, you can actually click on the Find in the Library link, and it will take you to WorldCat, the federated catalog of holdings of academic and local libraries, academic and public libraries, other libraries. You can actually search right now. It's saying I'm in Milpitas. I say could be in Seattle, and then I enter a zip code, and now I see the libraries near my house. I could perhaps go to the Seattle Public Library. I can click through actually to their catalog. If I have a card, I can actually put the book on hold. So it's a really interesting way to have students look for a book, preview the book, find the library where they can find the book, and get their hands on it. I think Google Books is a wonderful, wonderful way to bridge the electronic and potentially print research experience. It helps give students good control over their research, and especially it not only helps students confirm that a book that they're interested in has the information they want, it also helps students confirm that it's a good reading level for them. So, for example, I had a student who was doing research on Rube Goldberg and Rube Goldberg machines. And she actually had done a bunch of searching. Oops. and had done a bunch of reading within Google Books to just start to orient herself to the topic. And she saw a comment that that the machines were a social commentary. She wanted to know of what. So in reading these books, she discovered, and in using Google Books to search, she found a book on comic responses to the mechanical age, to the machine age. And she found this one book and it looked just perfect. So she opened it up and read the preview. And what she discovered was the book was actually way too difficult for her. So she couldn't understand it. She wasn't ready yet to use that book. So it was actually a really good thing that she looked it up first and previewed it in Google Books. It prevented her from going to some lengths to procure the book and then feeling frustrated. So I think that's a great option. The other great thing is there's just so much in here. I've actually had students do research on Krakatoa. There is in here a source from the Royal Society in Great Britain where they followed the weather changes in weather patterns over the course of a decade after the explosion, and was able to look at that original source from 1888. I had a student, I'm not sure I can pull this up spontaneously, but I actually had a student studying Egyptian gods and found in here a book written by the archaeologist who had excavated this temple. And so it was a book that was written as the excavation was underway, and she was able to read that. So again, from a primary source perspective, from a broadening your options and figuring out what books are good before you go there perspective, this is really wonderful. And hopefully by getting students excited about a book online, again, it will create a motivation to go to the library, to pick up that book and look on the shelves and do that browsing that we know really helps sometimes identify really great sources that you wouldn't find elsewhere. So, the last thing quickly about Google Books is it's not just books. Google Books actually has magazines in it. So if I click on the magazine link, I will actually see full text stories that are available to me. The collection is not very broad at this juncture, but it does have some really interesting sources. Again, my Rube Goldberg student found a 1923 article in Popular Science about why Rube Goldberg became an inventor, written by Rube Goldberg himself. So there are some pretty cool sources buried in there. You just need to use the left-hand panel to find them. Go ahead, use the left-hand panel to find great sources on Egyptian hieroglyphics. Moving on down the left-hand panel, our next stop is Places. Places has a lot of consumer use. It helps you find the closest pizza parlor to the place where you have your afternoon soccer game. It helps you find where you can make copies when you're on the go out of town. But in an academic sense, it's kind of interesting because it allows me to see places near Burlingame, California. Again, my current stated location to Google. And actually, I have to tell you that sitting here in Google headquarters, I've actually searched as if I were in Kampala. There are many, many options for location. But in any event, right now, I'm sitting in Burlingame from Google's point of view, and I am looking at places near me named after Rosa Parks. So it gives me an opportunity to say, okay, here's this person that I'm studying. What institutions are honoring her in my area? So go ahead and take a moment and see what institutions are honoring George Washington. Moving on, we have Google Google Blogs, pardon me. So blogs I enjoy personally on a number of levels. First of all, when you find a really good blog, you have the opportunity to get not only an informed opinion in the article itself, but the responses, of course, vary widely in quality, as we all know. But when you find a good post, you can get a really great overview of a subject. Anything from octopus intelligence, which I've looked up, and I found a great blog where different theories of animal intelligence were being debated in the comments. It helped me understand kind of the lay of the land in that field. Or more hands-on, when I heard that you could iron plastic shopping bags into fabric and sew with them, and I wanted to know more about that. On a crafting blog, the comments were fabulous, talking about what heat settings were the best, and oh, I added flowers to mine, and I tried this, and I tried that. So blogs can be really powerful collections, collective knowledge, or giving many different perspectives on a topic, or cumulative advice, potentially. As with other left-hand panels we've seen, the blog left-hand panel allows you to filter in time and also sort by time. It also allows you to choose whether you want posts on a topic or home pages on a topic. By home pages, it means blogs dedicated to the topic. In the case of Rosa Parks, the home pages, there we go, the home pages themselves are not actually about the person, Rosa Parks. They're schools named after her and so forth. But in a moment, you'll get to play with a subject where that's a little more on point. And then I can click back on posts and see individual posts. So please go ahead and check out dog cognition. So moving on, we've looked at full blogs. We can't forget microblogs like Twitter, Facebook, and other subjects. So for students studying current events, there might actually be a real value in coming and looking at real-time postings. I will note that in my case, I have set Safe Search on because microblogs are a good place to encounter not safe search. But another cool thing about microblogs here, I have on the right-hand side, I have the same tool, quite similar to the timeline view where we started our journey through the left-hand panel. This allows me to actually click on different times of day and see what people are saying. I can look at the month of January and see where there is more and more discussion taking place about Rosa Parks, and I can see even drill down to the time of day. I can look at all of 2011, which of course, since it's still January, is kind of silly. But looking at this this set of arrows here, I can actually go back to 2010. I'm not sure how far back I can go. I believe that we started tracking this in 2010. So I can then, again, click through. Nothing there. I can click through and I can check out different times. And I can compare the ebb and flow of a topic over time. This can be really interesting to see how a term is reflected in popular culture. So from that point of view, please go ahead and check out bipartisan in real-time search. Okay, so our final category that we're going to look at today in the left-hand panel is discussions. Now, discussions tracks two types of resources. One is forums, and one is question and answer sites, Q&A sites. I personally have preferences for one of these over another. Q&A sites, people post questions, and then they get individual answers that don't tend to interact with each other. They don't tend to cite sources. I question beyond stepping stone resource how useful Q&A sites necessarily are to an academic research process. On the other hand, forums I love. I love forums because they are conversations that tend to take place within some kind of self-selected existing community. Certainly there are higher quality and lower quality discussions in forums, but there are a number of applications. For one, sometimes someone will post to a forum like, I'm looking for resources about X. I'm looking for any aquarium with an octopus in the United States. I'm looking for good videos to show my class on Rosa Parks. I'm looking for good web quests to do on Rosa Parks. And then we'll follow a list of responses that build out essentially a list of sources for you to use. So that's really amazing. I have also had great success. I had a student researching the Boston molasses disaster where like 2 million gallons of molasses flooded the street and made like a tidal wave and knocked down a subway and killed a bunch of people. And turns out there are a bunch of songs that have been written about that event in our history. And this particular student found a forum where ethnomusicologists were sourcing one particular song, tracing it back to its origins, to the original composer. And it was a deeply academic discussion, and it showed very, very well the process whereby an academic traces a source back. I've actually often regretted that I did not make a record of that particular discussion, but very powerful. Another example is a student who wanted to know how to clean the algae off the glass in her fish tank, and she had read to use a sponge, but it didn't sound right to her. So she actually found a discussion, several in fact, among fish tank owners where people would say, well, I do it this way, and other people would discuss the pros and cons of that method, and eventually the group would come to a consensus. And by looking through just a couple of these fora, she actually found that a number of different groups had all come to the same consensus, and so she decided to follow the recommendations of all these groups based on how she saw the conversations play out. So it can be quite compelling, so please go ahead and give it a try, looking for information on plagiarism software. Okay, so that is the top half of the left-hand panel. We've looked at a number of different databases from everything, which is typical just web search that people think of Googling something, and all the left-hand panel options there. We looked at images. We talked about how to find videos that you can play at school. We talked about using Google News archives to find primary sources. We've talked about using Google Books and inspiring a trip to the library, about Google Places to see what your subject has named after it in your area, blogs, real-time, and discussions for capturing general knowledge or finding academic discussions about a specific topic. So that wraps it up for the top half of the left-hand panel. You can, when you're done, use the Viewer link to close it down. Now, I'm going to depart from the left-hand panel just for one more moment to show you a really phenomenal new feature that has recently been introduced, not in the left-hand panel, but in advanced search under web search. So just here, you have your search bar, and under the button, the search button, is the advanced search link. If you click on it, you find yourself in advanced search. And once you're in advanced search, there is this option here, the reading level search. When I click on the reading level search drop-down box, I am given a number of options. I can annotate results with reading levels, or I can show only basic, intermediate, or advanced level web pages. Now, a quick note on what makes a reading level. Our reading levels are determined by vocabulary level and by sentence structure. So they don't reflect anything about the appropriateness of the content, either in terms of the words used or the emotional maturity required to access a topic. It's purely vocabulary and sentence structure. That said, there's still a lot of students I know who've often asked if they can have help finding just web pages they can read. So when you are in advanced search, just a moment. Here you go. Now you can see that at the top of the page here, there's a new box that is showing us what reading level each, or what percentage of the results are each reading level. It's approximate. It might not add up exactly to 100, but it still gives you a general idea. There are a lot of pages at a relatively basic reading level available on the subject of Rosa Parks. I can see right here, again, I have a line of gray text right beneath my title that tells me the reading level of that particular source. So I like looking at the annotated results because, for example, when I had a student who looked up Stephanie Meyer's Twilight books, she found that, or Stephanie Meyer's webpage, the author of Twilight, she found that some of the pages on the site were ranked intermediate and some were ranked basic. So she might not have found everything she wanted if she had filtered specifically for one. On the other hand, now that I'm here, if I want, I can click on the basic link here, and now I'm looking at entirely websites that have been deemed basic reading level. And I can do the same for intermediate, I can do the same for advanced. And when I'm ready, if I want to go back to the annotated results, I can do here, view results for all reading levels, and I'm back where I started. So a few notes. Some people like to click on the advanced link to help them filter for academic content. You should be aware that, for example, when I had some young students looking for information on supernovas, pretty much all the basic pages ranked basic were about like the rock bands and going supernova and stuff like that, and the scientific content was all intermediate and advanced because the pages about supernovas had a lot of scientific terminology, even the simple ones. That said, I have also seen the reading level search bring to the surface really elementary school level reading materials on extremely complicated microbiology topics that I really hadn't thought would be possible to explain. I'd never seen sources explaining them in such clear and simple language before. So sometimes this can be extremely helpful in revealing sources that frankly you would really not come across otherwise. So that's reading level search. I hope that you will take some time to play with it. I hope you will take time to play with the left-hand panel that we've talked about today. And I also hope that you'll take a moment to fill out the survey that appears at the end of this webinar. We have put together the survey so that you can tell us both constructive criticism and also what you liked about today. I hope you will share, please, both. Please tell us what topics you'd like us to talk more about in the future, in future webinars. And also in the survey, you have an opportunity to tell us if you'd like to be on my mailing list so that you have first notice that the webinars are open for registration, because I know that we filled up pretty quickly this time. So please do take a moment to fill it out. Please take some time to check out the left-hand panel, and thank you so much for your time today. Goodbye.